Some ancient groups had access to much more food than others, especially people living near rivers, lakes, and coastlines. These environments could provide huge amounts of food during certain seasons. Take salmon runs, for example. In some regions, rivers became packed with fish. For a short period each year, food was everywhere. People could catch large numbers of fish with relatively little effort, and salmon is incredibly rich in calories. It's packed with protein. It's packed with fat. During these periods of abundance, people could eat far more than usual. As a result, some individuals may have gained extra body fat. That is completely possible. But there's an important difference. Even in these situations, ancient humans probably could not reach the levels of obesity that are common today. Why? Because natural foods work differently. A wild salmon fills you up. So does meat. So do roots and tubers. These foods activate the body's natural fullness signals. After a certain point, your brain starts telling you that you've had enough. The protein helps. The fiber helps. The nutrients help. Eventually, you simply stop wanting more. Scientists call this satiety. It's one of the body's natural control systems. Now compare that to many modern processed foods. A bag of chips, a box of cookies, sugary snacks. These foods are designed very differently. Many contain a carefully engineered combination of salt, fat, and carbohydrates. A combination specifically created to make you want another bite, and then another, and another. Food scientists sometimes refer to this as the bliss point. It's the balance of flavors that creates maximum enjoyment while reducing feelings of fullness. In other words, the food keeps your brain wanting more. Nature never created foods like this. A wild animal doesn't benefit when you keep eating forever. A fruit tree doesn't care how many berries you consume. But modern food companies have a different goal. The longer you keep eating, the more products get sold. And this difference matters because the archaeological evidence tells a very clear story. When scientists study the skeletons of ancient hunter-gatherers, they often find signs of surprisingly good health. Their bones are strong. Their bodies show evidence of regular movement. Their teeth are worn from tough foods, but they show very few cavities. Why? Because refined sugar wasn't part of their diet. Researchers also find little evidence of the chronic diseases that are common today. There are few signs of long-term obesity, few signs of severe metabolic problems. These were generally healthy people. Then something changed. Around 10,000 years ago, humans began farming. They settled down. They started growing crops. They stored grain. Villages became larger. Civilization began to take shape. And almost immediately, the skeletons started telling a different story. Average height began to decline. In some populations, people became several inches shorter within only a few generations. Something major had changed, and the effects were already showing up in the human body. The changes didn't stop there. Scientists noticed something else in the skeletal record. Bone density began to decline. Cavities became much more common. Signs of nutritional deficiencies started appearing. Iron deficiency, for example, became easier to spot in ancient bones. Evidence of disease also increased. As people settled into larger communities, infections spread more easily. In many ways, life was becoming easier, but in other ways, it was becoming harder. And that's where the irony begins. Agriculture gave humanity something incredible: a reliable food supply, stored grain, permanent settlements, cities, eventually entire civilizations. But there was a cost. Instead of eating a wide variety of foods, many people began relying heavily on a few crops. Often, whatever grain grew best in their region. Their diets became less diverse, and for the first time in history, large numbers of people could regularly access more calories than they immediately needed. That may not sound important, but it changed everything. For hundreds of thousands of years, food shortages had acted like a natural reset button. Periods of scarcity prevented long-term weight gain. Agriculture slowly removed that limitation. Obesity didn't suddenly appear overnight. Farmers still worked extremely hard. Growing food required constant effort, but the foundation had been laid. Humans now had the ability to store large amounts of food, and that changed the relationship between people and calories forever. You could even argue that the first step toward the modern grocery store happened when the first granary was built. The consequences simply took thousands of years to fully appear. Now let's address one of the most common arguments. Many people say ancient humans stayed lean because they were more active, and there's truth to that. Hunter-gatherers were incredibly fit. Studies consistently show they had more muscle and lower body fat than most modern populations. The Hadza are a great example. They are lean, strong, and highly active. Even older Hadza adults often perform better on fitness tests than much younger people living in industrialized countries. A lifetime of movement clearly matters. There's no question about that. But here's the important part. Fitness and calorie balance are not exactly the same thing. The Hadza aren't lean simply because they walk more. If that were the entire explanation, they would burn vastly more calories than modern people, but they don't. Their bodies adapt. Remember metabolic adaptation. Instead, researchers believe another factor plays a major role: their food environment. The Hadza eat natural foods, wild plants, roots, berries, honey, game meat, foods that are filling and difficult to overeat. There are no ultra-processed snacks, no sugary sodas, no foods specifically engineered to make you keep eating. If you gave a hunter-gatherer population unlimited access to modern processed foods while keeping the same active lifestyle, many scientists believe weight gain would still occur. Not because they stopped moving, but because calorie intake would increase dramatically. That's an important distinction. Exercise matters a lot. It improves heart health, metabolism, mental health, strength, and overall quality of life. But exercise alone is not a magic solution. The modern world often treats physical activity as if it can completely cancel out any diet. The evidence suggests it doesn't work that way. So let's return to the original question. Could ancient humans become obese in their natural environment? Probably not. But not because they were biologically different from us. Not because they had stronger willpower. Not because they possessed some lost ancient discipline. The real reason was much simpler. Their environment rarely allowed a long-term calorie surplus. Food shortages were normal. Periods of hunger were common. And the foods available were natural, filling, and difficult to overconsume. In other words, the conditions needed for widespread obesity simply didn't exist. The truth is, ancient humans wanted to store fat. Their bodies were built for it. Every extra calorie was valuable. Every bit of stored energy increased the chances of survival. The only problem was that food wasn't always available. The environment kept getting in the way. There simply wasn't enough food, often enough for large-scale obesity to become common. But now, imagine taking that same ancient human and placing them in the modern world. Everything changes. Food is available 24 hours a day. Highly processed snacks fill every store. Meals can be delivered to your door within minutes. Thousands of calories are always within reach. And many of those foods are carefully designed to keep you eating. Now add something else. Long hours sitting down. Less physical movement. Artificial light late at night. Poor sleep. Constant stress. So all of these factors influence hunger and appetite. Suddenly, that ancient survival system finds itself in a completely different environment. How would it respond? Probably the same way many modern people do. It would try to store as much energy as possible. In fact, an ancient human might struggle even more. They would have no experience with abundance, no understanding of portion sizes, no concept of processed food, no idea that food could always be available tomorrow. Imagine showing a drive-through menu to someone from 50,000 years ago. Their brain would see an unbelievable opportunity, a mountain of calories available instantly. Every survival instinct would activate. Eat now, store energy, prepare for the future. Because for most of human history, the future was uncertain. The ancient human isn't completely different from us. The ancient human is us. We share the same biology, the same genes, the same hormones, the same reward systems inside the brain. The gap between us and a human who lived tens of thousands of years ago is surprisingly small. From an evolutionary perspective, it's almost nothing. Our bodies evolved in a world of scarcity, but now they exist in a world of abundance, and that creates a conflict. Not because the body's broken, but because the environment changed much faster than evolution could keep up. Think about those moments when you reach for another chip, even though you've already had several. That isn't necessarily a lack of discipline. It's a survival system, responding exactly the way it was designed to respond. Or when a sugary snack leaves you wanting more, while a piece of fruit feels satisfying. Your brain is reacting differently to foods it never evolved to handle. Even dessert can seem tempting after a large meal, not because something is wrong with you, but because your brain still treats sugar and fat as rare and valuable rewards. For hundreds of thousands of years, those rewards were difficult to find. Today, they're everywhere, and that may be the biggest lesson of all. Ancient humans didn't avoid obesity because they were superior. They avoided it because their world made it almost impossible. We inherited the same body, the same instincts, the same biology. The difference is that we changed the environment, and now we're living with the consequences.